Is South Carolina planning on banning Airbnbs? Not quite. But if the legislators pass the bill HB 3876, it sure as hell going to feel like it. So if you all may not know by now, my name is Henry Jones and I'm a real estate investor in the South Carolina, Columbia area. My portfolio consists of single family, multifamily, Airbnbs, etc., etc. And if the bill HB 3876 passes, it's going to directly affect Airbnb investors and real estate investors who are planning to get into the Airbnb market. So I'm here to provide information and knowledge to people who want to get into the Airbnb space or who just wants to invest in real estate in general. So today I'm going to give some background information about this bill, also what are the effects of the bill, and what you can do as a South Carolinian to prevent this bill from passing. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of this bill, I first want to watch a short WCSC news briefing where they go into the bill and just talk about some of the effects that it'll have on the Airbnb market.
The bill centers on how short-term rental taxes are collected and sent to the government, especially when payments are run through a property manager. House Bill 3876 says if accommodations intermediaries like Airbnb, Vrbo, and Expedia are used and a licensed real estate property manager lists properties on their website, that manager becomes the merchant of record. That means they collect the money and hold it in a trust account until the renter checks out. Vrbo and Expedia follow that practice and back the bill. Airbnb opposes it. Right now, Airbnb acts as a merchant of records, meaning they collect all taxes and submit them to the state on behalf of the host. If the bill passes, it would make property managers responsible for tax collection and remittance themselves. Airbnb collected and remitted $89.7 million in South Carolina state and local taxes in 2025. The total could shift under the new proposed setup. Melody Templeton in Mount Pleasant says she and her husband own and manage 2 Airbnbs, and they're concerned the change would add more steps and more confusion.
To me, it sounds like a nightmare for the government, and I think it's a poor choice to complicate the process when it's been already streamlined.
Templeton adds she believes the bill could end up benefiting larger rental operators. I asked Representative Lee Hewitt, who represents Charleston and Georgetown counties and is sponsoring the bill, whether it could hurt small-scale property managers.
No, because the way the bill is now, the way it's been amended, is they have an option. They can either allow Airbnb to become the merchant of record and hold those funds, or if they want to feel like if they're not worried about what might happen if they're not following state law, but you'll have an option. You can either choose to continue to operate as is, or you can ask that you as a company become the merchant of record.
The bill passed in Senate Finance today and will be heard on the House floor tomorrow, where lawmakers could bring it up for debate. The session ends on May 14th. If you'd like to read the proposed bill for yourself, we have details on our website, live5news.com. Reporting in Mount Pleasant, Hannah Borkert, Live 5 News.
So I want to start this off by saying your state and local government, they be lying. They be lying. This bill will support significant restrictions against short-term rental owners and also the platforms that supports those real estate investors. In the news briefing, you probably heard the word accommodations intermediary, and that's just a fancy word for a third-party booking agency that short-term rental owners use to book guests to stay at their homes, such as Airbnb, Vrbo, or any other travel agency that you may use online. And another word that you might have heard in the news briefing is called merchant of record. And merchant of record is just another fancy term for an entity who collects taxes and pays them to the state on behalf of the short-term rental owner. So in this scenario, the accommodations intermediary can also hold the title merchant of record. That's basically Airbnb taking payment from the guest, taking the taxes out, and paying them to the appropriate state. So let's talk a little bit about what this bill does. The bill HB 3876 would prevent short-term rental owners who use property management companies from also using digital platforms like Airbnb, Verbo to complete the tax fee collection process. So basically, if you as a short-term rental property owner, if you're using a management company, your management company now becomes the merchant of record and can no longer list your property on Airbnb or Verbo. And that's a problem. This bill will mandate that platforms like Airbnb share guest credit card numbers and payment details with third party property management companies. This is a gross violation of financial privacy and opens the door to abuse, fraud, and loss of consumer trust. If you're on Airbnb, then you've probably already received the notification that Airbnb is not for this bill. Secondly, Airbnb may cease all operations in South Carolina. Airbnb has warned that this bill's legal and logistic burdens can make it impossible to continue hosting in South Carolina. The result would be loss of income for thousands of homeowners and reduced travel options for visitors. So if you're thinking about getting into this space, it would be pointless because Airbnb would be no more. So let's talk about some of the options that you as a short-term rental property owner would have if Airbnb or Verbo ceased to exist. First, as the owner, you would probably sell your property. The older property owners who don't have the bandwidth to maintain the property, collect the taxes, and do all the things that surround owning a short-term rental, they're going to look heavily at a property management company. And let me tell you, the property management companies are not your friend. They're going to tack on all these fees for every little thing. And lastly, the Bill 3876 creates a compliance minefield that exposes platforms and hosts to liability for how taxes are collected, who processes payments, and how data is handled, all dictated by the South Carolina government. Meaning, South Carolina will basically have a hand in how you handle your property. It's just more regulations, more strict ruling, and more oversight by your government. And who wants that? Nobody. Believe me, a large property management company isn't going to bat an eye at Airbnb and Verbo going away and them not being able to list your property on those digital platforms. You know why? Because that company is going to create their own booking domain, which they're going to charge you a fee for to allow guests to book through their platforms. What you can do is contact your legislator and tell them, do not support this bill. You can email, call, social media tags, whatever you need to do or whatever is at your disposal to get in contact with your legislators to let them know, hey, I do not want you to vote for this bill. Let them know how you as a short-term rental owner benefits from using digital platforms to run your short-term rental property business. So if you're still watching up to this point, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I will be coming to you guys with different topics as I go through my real estate journey. And maybe one day we can do business together. So make sure you keep up with the Joneses. Peace out.